Hey everyone, welcome to Home Recording Made Easy and here on my YouTube channel, and welcome to the Beginner's Guide to Mixing in Studio One version 3. These videos are intended to help the absolute beginner, whether you're coming from another DAW or whether you have never recorded in any digital audio workstation before. These videos will help you get up and running with no fuss and no muss so you can start mixing your next project in Studio One version 3. Now this week's video we're going to take a look at setting up a mixing template and how I set up a mixing template to kind of help speed up my workflow. But before we get to that, if you'd be so kind, please hit that subscribe button. Also head out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com after this video and check out all the other training that I have to offer at homerecordingmadeeasy.com. So let's take a look at the screen here over in Studio One. So here we are looking at the start screen. So when you first launch Studio One, obviously you're going to see the start screen, and we're going to start from the very scratch, from very beginning. How do I set up a new song so I can import my audio files, so on and so forth. So we're going to take a look at that today. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come over to the top left-hand corner of the start page, and we're going to go to create a new song. Now what's going to happen here is you're going to get the new song users dialog box. Now as you can see here, we have two choices. We have empty song under the user tab, or we have a mixing template which I created myself, my own mixing template that I use every time I'm going to start a mix, which already has a lot of my bussing set up, has a lot of my go-to plugins that I use just to kind of help speed up my workflow. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to set up your own template today so you can do that to help speed up your workflow. So for this example, we're going to go create an empty new song. Over on the right hand side, you're going to have the song title, and then you're going to have where do you want to put this on your hard drive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click that, and I'm going to come out to my hard drive here, and I have an external hard drive called Vision RAID, and I'm just going to put that out here on the Vision RAID drive, and I'm just going to create a new folder by clicking this button down here in the bottom left hand corner, and we're going to call this New Song Test. Okay, and then we're going to create a folder, and this is where I'm going to create my new song, and I'm going to hit open in the bottom right hand corner of this. Okay, and then we're going to create a new song here. So I'm just going to, this new song is going to be called, let's say test song, just for this example. Okay, test song, and we're going to be putting it in the new song test folder. Now down below that we're going to have our sample rate, resolution, so on and so forth. I typically keep it at 44:124-bit. The song length, I'm just going to go ahead and put, say, 5 minutes, and I'll show you why that's important a little bit later. And then the tempo, now if you know the tempo of the song that you're going to be mixing, you may want to put that in here. If not, you can just leave it to the standard 120. I know my song happens to be 70 beats per minute, 70 BPM. And it's a 4/4 time. I'm going to leave the stretch audio files to song tempo off, because if you check this box and if your tempo is not at 70 beats a minute, meaning the audio files you bring into the session is not at 70 beats a minute, it's going to stretch the audio, and you don't want to do that because you're going to get a bunch of artifacts you don't want. Play overlaps I'm going to leave off, and I'm just going to hit OK. And this is going to open up an empty song screen here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a mixing template. Okay, so now typically I would already have my template set up, but I want to show you how to do that today. So when I'm thinking about setting up a mixing template, I'm thinking about what are the things that I'm going to be using every single mix. Now, if you're brand new to working in Studio One, or if you're brand new to working in a digital audio workstation, you may have not figured all that out yet because you just started getting to go here. But once you've been mixing a while, you're going to find that you're going to have a lot of the same core setup. You may be using a lot of very similar plugins, or there may be one plugin that you may use on all your mixes. You may have certain effects you use in every single mix. So it's a good idea to set up a mixing template so you don't have to start everything from scratch every single time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I know that for me, because I haven't imported any audio yet, we're going to do that in a future video. I know that I'm going to always have what's called a bussing system. Let me just explain what that means right now. Okay, so in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen here, you're going to see three buttons: Edit, Mix, and Browse. See that beneath the browser? If you click on the browser button, that's going to open and close our browser. So let's keep this closed, or close it if you have it open, and click the Mix button, and that's going to bring up our console view down here in Studio One. And as you can see, there's no tracks here because we haven't added anything yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a bussing system, and I'm going to show you how to do that, and I'm going to explain what that is in a second. So anywhere here in the console view, I'm just going to right-click, and I'm going to go add a bus channel. Okay, and then we're going to see we're going to get a bus up here. I can just close this, close the insert effects by doing this. Now, a busing system is really simple. It's a track where you can take individual tracks. Let's say drums, for example, where maybe you have a kick, snare, tom, overheads, and room mics, and I can send all those individual drum tracks over to a bus, and then a bus will allow me to control the volume of that entire drum kit. So once you have your drum kit individually mixed and you have the volumes of each one of those individual elements at the level that you like, you can control the whole volume of the entire drum kit on one fader. So that's what a bus will do for you. So I know that I'm going to have a different bus track for each groupings of instruments. So for example, I'm going to have a bus for my drums. I'm going to have a bus for my guitars if I have multiple guitar tracks. I'm going to have a bus for my vocals. I'm even going to have a bus for my bass, which I'll explain, or pianos or anything like that. So any groupings of instruments that I'm going to have in almost every mix that you do, I'm going to have a bus for that. So that will help me if I have, let's say, a 24 individual tracks of drums, guitars, vocals, pianos, percussion, so on and so forth. Instead of having to control the entire mix with all 24 faders, I can send those groupings down to some bus tracks, and then I can control the whole mix with fewer tracks. Make sense? We'll be looking at this in more detail in future videos. Don't worry. This is just how we can set up our template. So I went ahead and I right-clicked and I added a bus track. Now I know I'm going to have at least 6 different bus tracks. So I'm going to right-click again. I'm going to add a bus. Okay. I'm going to do this 6 times. Right-click, add a bus. Right-click, add a bus. Right-click, add a bus, and I know I'm going to name these. So I know for me, I'm just going to double-click down here in bus 1. I'm going to call this drum bus. The next one, I'm going to do bass bus. The next one's going to be guitar bus. Next one's going to be keyboards bus. And then the last one will say it'll be vocal bus. And then I'll even add another one for background vocals. So again, right click, come down here where it says bus channel, add a bus channel. And I'm going to call this, oops, I'm just going to drag this over to the end, left click and drag, and I'm going to call this background vocal bus. Okay, so I always start off my mix with 6 buses. Now every mix is going to be a little bit different, and depending on what what audio I'm going to import, I may add or remove buses to that particular project, but this gets me a good starting point. Okay, so this is how I add my buses to my mixing console. Now, I also know, because just from experience, I also know that I'm going to be adding effects, reverbs, delays, things of that nature. So what I want to do is I want to set up some of those effects tracks already, and then I'm going to add some plugins to that so I know exactly, so I already kind of have them pre-set up. Okay, so it's already down in my mixer view. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to right click here and I'm going to add an effects track. See, underneath the bus channel, we're going to call it an effects track. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the color of my effects tracks to keep them different so they're separated from my bus. I'm just going to left click where it says effects 1 and you'll see the color palette. I like to color mine blue, but you can color yours whatever color you'd like. And now I'm going to have, I'd say 4 effects tracks from reverbs and delays. So again, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to right click, add effects track, right click, add effects, right click, add effects. Okay, and you can add as few or as many as you want. I'm going to color code these all the same color by just clicking on the first one, holding down my shift key, click on the last one so they're grouped together temporarily. Then I'm just going to left click in the bottom here and change that color to blue. Now I know that I'm going to have, say, 2 delays and 2 reverbs for this example. You can put anything on these tracks, but just for this example, I'm just going to go ahead and name this delay 1. I'm going to tab over delay 2. I'm going to have reverb 1 and then reverb 2. Okay, so now what I've done is I have my busing and I have my effects already set up, at least the tracks. Now I haven't put any effects on that. We'll do that in a second here. And you can also see here that when I added my effects tracks, the solos are lit up green. And what that means, oops, let's go ahead and let's undo that. When you hold down shift or when you create effects tracks, it'll automatically set them up in what's called solo safe mode. What solo safe mode means that when you are soloing tracks throughout and muting tracks throughout your mix while you're checking different elements of your mix, it'll always keep your effects on. So for example, if you wanted to solo up a vocal track, you could solo up the vocal and it's not going to mute the effects, so you can actually hear the effect you have on that vocal. Make sense? And again, we'll talk about this later in another video, but just realize that when you see the solo lit up green, if you hover your mouse over it, you'll see it says solo safe. If I hold down the shift key and I click on that, it will turn it off. Okay, and then it just acts like a regular solo. But if I hold down my shift key and click on solo, it's going to put it in solo safe mode. And I like to keep it in solo safe mode. Okay, I also know that I'm also going to be doing what I call parallel compression in all my mixes. And again, if you want to know about parallel compression, check out other videos on my YouTube channel. But I know I'm going to have as many parallel compression tracks as I have bus tracks. Okay, and we'll explain why in other videos. So again, next to my effects, I'm now going to set up a bunch of buses that I'm going to use for parallel compression. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click over, I'm going to highlight this last reverb track. I'm going to right click and add a bus track, and I'm going to add 6 more. 5, 6. Now, because these are going to be different than our busing tracks, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click on the first one, hold down my shift key, click on the last one and highlight all of these, and then I'm going to go ahead and change them to my color. I use purple for my parallel tracks. Now for the first track, I'm going to have a parallel track for drums. My second track will be for bass. My third track will be for guitars, just like over here in my busing system. So it's going to look just like my buses over here to the left, but it's going to be parallel tracks. So I like to use the naming scheme P drums, P for parallel compression. And then P bass, P guitars, P keys, P vocals, and P background vocals. So now I have a set of tracks that I'm going to use for parallel compression. Okay, so now every time I go ahead and I create a new song and I load this template, and it's already going to have these tracks set up for me, which is really, really nice. Very, 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 very helpful, which is great. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to, let's see, turn those back on, turn those off. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now that I have my busing system, my effects, and my parallel tracks, I also like to set some stuff up on my master bus, some plugins, and I like to set some stuff up, some effects on my effects track. So again, when I open up my session, I always have the same effects as a starting point. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to expand my mixer by clicking on this double arrow here, and I'm going to use my cursor and drag up so you can see the expanded view of the mixer. Now I know for my delays, for example, I know that I'm going to use a couple of different delays that I usually are my go-tos. So I'm going to open up my browser by clicking on the browse button here, and I'm going to go to my effects tab up here in the top left. And I'm going to put on a couple of plugins that I would typically use on most of my mixes. So I'm going to drag over, whoop, this is delay. We want a delay. So let's go over to our delay. Let's see. And you could put any plugins here, but where is it? Let me find it. See, this is part of the problem. When you already have it set up in a template, you don't have to do what I'm doing here, which is searching for your favorite plugins. Where is it? Okay, so I'm going to grab this delay. This is the Slate Digital Repeater by Slate Digital. I'm going to use that. I also know that I'm going to probably use another one of my favorite delays that I typically like to use is by a plugin manufacturer called Soundtoy Echo Boy. So I'm going to put that on delay number 2. Okay, and then I have a couple of reverb tracks. I know that I'm going to use my Slate Digital reverb. So I'm going to come over here and check this out here, Slate Digital. Verb Suite Classics. And then I also know from another reverb, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add one of my Universal Audio reverbs that I really like. Another third-party manufacturer. And I'm going to put its, let's see. Dream Verb down here. Okay. Okay, so I know that I'm going to keep some of those plugins on my effects. And again, these are just go-tos. These things can change from mix to mix, but this is kind of a good starting point. It's most of my go-tos. Okay, now I also know that on my busing system and on my parallel tracks, I know I'm going to use some console emulation by Slate Digital. I'm always going to use the same plugin, even though I might use a couple of different consoles, but I'm going to use the same plugin on every single track, which is the Virtual Mix Rack by Slate Digital. So I'm going to put that on my drum bus here, and you can see that it's open. And I know that I'm going to be using, on every single mix, I know that I'm going to be using the VCC. So I'm going to put the mix bus part of the plugin. I'm not going to set it to anything. I'm going to leave it as default because every mix is going to be different, but I know I'm going to be using this plugin. So once I have it on the first track, an easy way in Studio One to add it to all the other tracks is highlight the track, hold down Shift, highlight the last track, and just take it and drag it, and you'll see it'll populate all the tracks over here. So now I have the VCC on all my buses. I'm also going to do the same thing on all my parallel tracks because that's something that I do. Now your mix template's going to look a little different than mine, obviously, but I'm just showing you the concept. So now I have the VCC on all my parallel tracks as well as all of my busing system, again, saving me time. So every time when I open up a mix session or try to create a new mix, I don't have to set this up from scratch. Okay, now I'm also going to go ahead on my master bus. I'm going to put my master bus chain here as well, over here on the right-hand side. So once again, I'm going to open up the browse button. I know that the first plugin that I'm going to use in my master bus is going to be the VCC. Once again, I'm going to use the Virtual Console collection. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to put this on, even though I'm not going to set it up. The next plugin I'm going to use is probably one of the Slate Digital's virtual bus compressors. So I'm going to put the VBC rack on here, which has 3 compressors in it. And I'm just going to keep them all shut off because typically I'm either going to use their FG Gray, which is the SSL, or the FG Red, which is the Focusrite, or the FG Mu, which is the Fairchild. Not sure which one I'm going to use. It'll be dependent on the mix. So I'm just going to shut the power buttons off on all of those and just have them ready to go. I also know I'm going to be following that up with some kind of other processing, usually, some kind of Slate Digital thing. So I'm going to put another instance of the virtual mix rack, and I'm just going to leave it open because I don't know if I'm going to use some EQ on the master bus. I don't know if I'm going to use some additional compression or if I'm going to use some specialty processing like Revival or like the CS Lift. I'm not really sure. It'll depend on each mix, but I'm going to leave that up there as kind of a placeholder. And then lastly, on my mix bus, I know I'm going to have some tape emulation, and I typically will reach for the VCC, and I'll put it on the half-inch 2-track model here. So this is my typical master bus chain. So now once I have everything kind of set up, and again, you may have additional things that you want to do as far as effects or busing or so on and so forth. But once I have this basic shell, I know this is going to be, every time I open up or start a new mix, I'm going to be opening up this template, and then this is going to get me to this point. So then from this point, I can just start importing my audio files and we can start moving from there. So now to save this as a template, all you have to do before you do anything else, once you've got your basic go-to stuff in place, you're going to come up to File and you're going to go to Save as Template, right? And you're going to name the template, and then you can put a description. You can put an icon, so you or a place or where an icon, so you can have a picture of a logo or something like that. So we can just call this test song or call my mix template 1. Mix template 1, you can describe it. You could call it mixing with plugins or with plugs, something to that effect. This way it'll show up in the user list later, okay? And then again, you can change the picture. Now, if you already have a template and you're just modifying an existing template that you already had, you can go to this thing called Replace Existing. And then it'll bring up your mixing templates, and you can go ahead and decide to save it if you'd like. You can overwrite a template that you may already have. And I do that from time to time as I get new plugins and things. And my template is probably changing 2-3 times a year. As I enhance my template, I'll save it as I'll replace my existing one. But you don't have to do that. You can save different versions as well. It's completely up to you. But we're just going to say, okay, we're going to save this as mix template 1, mixing with plugs. And we're just going to leave the standard icon here. We're going to hit OK. Okay, now this is saved as a template. So now if I were to go ahead and I were to close this, Do I want to save the changes? Because this was supposed to be a song file. We can say, no, we're not going to save the changes. Okay, so now we're going to create a new song. And if we go to create a new song, now you'll see in the list, here it is, mix template or mix template 1, mix with plugs. There's the template that you have. And if we choose the location again, where do we want to save this? And we can say we're going to save this, let's see, over here. And we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call this, let's see. So for future videos, we're going to call this S1 Beginner's Guide. To mixing, okay? So I'm going to create a folder, S1 Beginner's Guide to Mixing. I'm going to say open. And then again, I'm going to keep everything 44.1, 24-bit. I'm not going to stretch the audio files. It's going to set the BPM at 70 because I know the song we're going to be working on in future videos will be 70. But if not, it'll be at standard 120. And then I'm just going to hit OK. And then watch what's going to happen. It's going to go ahead, it's going to load up all our plugins, and there we are. So there is our template that we just created. So now from this point forward, every time you're going to start a new mix and you're getting ready to import your audio files, you can just choose that template when you create a song, and that'll get you to this point. And if you open up the mixer, you can see all the plugins that we added, and now you can just go ahead and you can import your files and start getting ready to set up the rest of your mix. So I hope this video was helpful. Again, for more tips, tricks, concepts, and training around everything home recording, be sure to head out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, sign up for the VIP email list. You'll get tons of free stuff just for doing so, and pay attention to the Quick Mix series and the Made Easy series, as they will help you take your mixes to the next level. And until the next video, this has been David with homerecordingmadeeasy.com, and I will speak to you all soon. Take care.